Okay, this video is about Michael Crichton. He's a great American writer. He's a physician. He graduated from Harvard undergrad and with a major in anthropology, then from Harvard Medical School, but he decided not to become a clinical physician. He did end up writing the TV show ER, which was a great TV show many years ago. He's one of the best writers of the 1900s. And he says lots of clever things, and he tells the truth about a lot of stuff. Okay, here's a typical Michael Crichton. He's funny, too. Everyone has an agenda except me. He's a brilliant guy. The guy's a genius. I studied him because I was interested in studying all the geniuses. He would read over 300 books a year, and that's how he could write such on so many complex subjects. Techno thrillers was sort of his specialty, like Jurassic Park. And here's the typical quotes from him. I took to haunting bookstores and would buy $500 worth of books at a time, about 300 books, carrying them off in cartons. $5,000 in modern money he would buy of books. Books on every conceivable subject: dinosaurs, hot air ballooning, family. These are quotes from Michael Crichton. And by the way, I think students, when they take English literature classes in high school, they should study, great American writers, not all this Mark Twain stuff in the 1800s. Fine, Mark Twain, but study Michael Crichton as well. Learn what people are really doing in the real world. You'll learn about them. Study Ayn Rand, okay? And there's other great ones too. We'll leave it at that for now. Okay, family. Raising children is, in a sense, the reason society exists in the first place. It is the most important thing that happens, and it is the culmination of all the tools and language and social structure that have evolved. Okay, that's where things were at in Michael Crichton's day, which isn't that long ago. About 40 years ago, that should be the most important thing in society, is to raise children well. Now they send them to the public schools and they try to castrate them and sterilize them. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. Kids didn't have huge backpacks when I was their age. We didn't have backpacks at all. Now it seemed that all the kids had them. You saw little second graders bent over like Sherpas, dragging themselves through the school doors under the weight of their packs. Some of the kids had their packs on rollers, hauling them like luggage to the airport. I didn't understand any of this. The world was becoming digital. Everything was supposed to be smaller and lighter, but these kids were lugging more weight than ever before. Okay, so, he says lots of funny stuff, and we're going to get into some new other interesting stuff. I just sort of had these quotes organized in this way. Okay, there's one problem with all psychological knowledge. No one can apply it to themselves. People can be incredibly astute about the shortcomings of their friends, spouses, and children, but they have no insight into themselves at all. The same people who are coldly, clear-eyed about the world around them have nothing but fantasies about themselves. Psychological knowledge doesn't work if you look in a mirror. This bizarre fact, as far as I know, is unexplained. Okay, then some of the things I really like about Michael Crichton, he really dug into a lot of the controversies of the age, and we're going to start getting into more of that here. Okay, Michael Crichton, quote, "Perceiving the truth has always been a challenge to mankind, but in the disinformation age, it takes on a special urgency. For the most part, members of our species simply repeat what they are told and then become upset if they are exposed to any different view. The characteristic human trait is conformity. Humans are stubborn, self-destructive conformists." Michael Crichton. And I've seen that too, is that people tend to give way too much credit to authorities. Authority figures, in my experience, most of them are bogus and fake and dishonest. So be very skeptical. If you want to be intelligent, you should be skeptical until proven otherwise. And Crichton was very much like that. Crichton warned the internet is bad. He said it's going to try to homogenize everything and it's going to destroy all these mom and pop businesses. It's going to produce more conformity. He was right on about that in many, many ways. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. "The purpose of life is to stay alive. Watch any animal in its natural setting, and all it does is try to stay alive. Whenever any animal's behavior puts it out of touch with its realities, it becomes extinct." Okay, now that's an important point, because for many people, they don't have good sources of information. Most people are functionally illiterate, and they don't seek out information. And I can tell you, because I have a boring life, I spend a lot of time seeking out information. You have to go to other video channels. You have to go to small blogs, and if you want to know what's really happening, if you want to know the truth about all kinds of controversial subjects, that's the only way you're going to find useful information. All of the mainstream big stuff, it's all homogenized, it's all sort of all the same, and it doesn't tell you stuff you need to know. So like you're like an animal. If the animal doesn't know what's going on, it dies. Okay, and so I actually have a prediction. I'm sorry to say this, but so many people are out of touch with reality about health. That's why they can't maintain their health. Okay, and it's a big deal. So anyways, there's a lot of things I can't tell you. I'm not allowed to tell you, but as much as what I can tell you, I just told you. You have to go to other video channels to seek out different topics. For nutrition, YouTube is the best by far. Okay, but for most of these other subjects, it's not. And there's plenty of video channels that are much better. Check out Rumble. Check out BitChute. Okay, check out TikTok even. There's lots of crazy, stupid stuff at those sites. But it's almost like you have to have all the crazy, stupid stuff, or otherwise the good stuff wouldn't exist. That just seems to be the way it is. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. For our own species, evolution occurs mostly through our behavior. We innovate behavior to adapt. Okay, Michael Crichton's right on that, and he's right on a lot of things. He was interested in anthropology. He made the point, too, that Darwinian biology is bogus. And by that I mean no one understands how evolution really occurs in terms of creation of the genetic variety amongst animals. You can explain with selective breeding, variety within a species, maybe even up to the family level, but no one can explain it beyond that, not even remotely. And so he was aware that people who really study biology, they know that, okay? There's all kinds of internet posers that, try to use it for philosophy reasons, like Richard Dawkins just recently said, yes, your life is meaningless, get over it. Dawkins is a BS artist, okay? I majored in evolutionary biology. We're not going to get into that. That's not the subject here, but trust me, he's a total exaggerator, and he plays a lot of dishonest games, and he knows it. And a lot of people have pointed that out. Okay, let's get now back to Michael Crichton. And this is now from his book, The Lost World. Among higher animals, adaptive fitness was no longer transmitted to the next generation by DNA at all. It was now carried by teaching. Chimpanzees taught their young to collect termites with a stick. Zoo animals frequently could not care for their offspring because they had never seen it done. Velociraptors. Now this is from Jurassic Park. Okay, continuing with Michael Crichton. Velociraptors were among the most intelligent dinosaurs and the most ferocious. Both traits demanded behavioral control. Adaptive behavior was a kind of morality. It was a behavior that had evolved over many generations because it was found to succeed. But on this island, Jurassic Park, the velociraptors had been recreated in a genetics laboratory. Although their physical bodies were genetically determined, their behavior was not. These newly created raptors came into the world with no older animals to guide them, to show them proper behavior for a raptor. They were on their own, and that was just how they behaved, in a society without structure, without rules, without cooperation. They lived in an uncontrolled, every creature for himself world, where the meanest and the nastiest survived and all the others died. Michael Crichton from The Lost World. So that's one of the points he makes, is that, and especially for humans, that's why children, for example, they're much better off growing up with a mother and a father, because they learn different things from the mother and their father. And moms tend to, give them all the unconditional love, and kids need that, but they also need the harsh reality that a father brings to them. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. No human activity even comes close to the development of the human body. We can barely describe it, yet alone imitate it. Okay, that's another good point too, because a lot of people think, oh, science is so smart. Oh, BS. Read an embryology book and you'll see exactly what he's talking about. We can barely describe the complexity of human development. It's so far beyond us. And you get the smartest humans, the ones who, discover some big new thing. And you know what? They devote their entire life to understanding one tiny little millionth of what's really happening in terms of biology and physiology. And that's like the greatest human minds on the planet. So what I'm trying to say is the amount of knowledge that went into producing a human body is way, way, way beyond anything any individual human could even conceive, yet alone do. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. What about intellectual diversity? That's the most important kind of diversity. Yeah, he's right. And he's absolutely right, is that intellectual diversity is typically not welcome. Usually, a lot of times, diversity is used as a game to block out certain people and to include certain people and to play political games rather than anything about real fairness, okay? Okay, Michael Crichton continues. Right now, we are in exactly the same position as the Renaissance painters, commissioned to make the portrait that the patron wants done. And if they're smart, they'll make sure that their work subtly flatters the patron. Not overtly, but subtly. And he's right, that what's happening is with our scientists, they're totally paid off. Nowadays, it's very difficult for a scientist to work unless they follow the party line and they do what the big funders want. And the big funders are going to be corporations. They're going to be like big pharma. And so that's why you'll see all these papers. The journals are like a joke. You go to the grocery store and you see an investing journal about, these money market funds and stuff. But that's not real information. That's just marketing. And that's the same thing what most medical journals are. They're basically just advertisements for drugs. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. Let's be clear. The work of science has nothing whatsoever to do with consensus. Science requires only one investigator who happens to be right, which means that he or she has the results that are verifiable by reference to the real world. In science, consensus is irrelevant. The greatest scientists in history are great precisely because they broke with consensus. Michael Crichton, MD. And by the way, he had studied climate change rather extensively, and he came to the conclusion that it was bogus. This was his book called State of Fear. Now, I have not personally read much about it yet, but I am doubtful from the little bit that I do know. It just seems to me if climate change was such a big deal, then why do we trash the environment with chemtrails? Why do we trash the environment but with these trains poured in there with their pollution poured into the rivers? Why do we trash the environment like with the Nord Stream pipeline? Okay, if we really care, why don't we hassle China about their polluting their country so much and thus the air of the whole world? How come nobody ever hassles them? How come it's always just, you stupid American peasants, your farts are producing CO2 and methane, and therefore you need to pay more taxes? Okay, that sounds bogus, doesn't it? Okay, remember that childhood story when you were young? Henny penny, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Yeah, give me a break. It's always the peasant's fault, so the peasant needs to pay more taxes, and the peasant has to give up their private property, etc., etc. That sounds a little bit like a scam, doesn't it? Okay, but then I really should study it. I only got so much time. I wish I had more time. Okay, I wish I had I was part of one of these think places where they pay you to just think and write books. I would love to do that. If you know one of those places that'll take me, I'd love to do it. But in my experience, usually they're scared of people like me who really want to know the truth and study and say the truth. There's not much money in that. Anyways, let's continue with Michael Crichton. Here's his next quote. Consensus is invoked only in situations where the science is not solid enough. Historically, the claim of consensus has been the first refuge of scoundrels. It is a way to avoid debate by claiming that the matter is already settled. Whenever you hear that the consensus of scientists agrees on something or other, reach for your wallet because you're being had. Michael Crichton. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. You're going to hear the consensus is that the best treatment for diabetes is stacks of pills, when you can just cure it in 5 seconds, type 2 diabetes, if you catch it early by, becoming a low-fat vegan, all right? And same thing for coronary artery disease. But you'll never hear a consensus of experts on, TV saying that. No way. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. We live in a world of frightful givens. It's a given that you should behave like this. It's a given that you should care about that. No one thinks about the givens. Isn't it amazing in the information society? No one thinks. We expected to banish paper, but we actually banished thought. Okay, that's a line from Jurassic Park. Here's more stuff from Jurassic Park. They're technicians. They don't have intelligence. They have what I call thintelligence. They think narrowly. They don't see the consequences. Okay, and that was referring to how these scientists had been able to clone a dinosaur, but had no idea of what would happen if they actually released them into the wild, which they did in Jurassic Park. Michael Crichton continues. It takes enormous effort to avoid all theories and just see. Yes, that is very true. A lot of what it takes to really be smart and come up with new ideas and better ways of seeing things is just being kind of brave, being honest, having the courage to say what you really think and pursue your thought, all the way out to researching and looking it up. Okay, and again, that's one of the things I admired about McDougall. Okay, he sort of said, look, this is the right way to see this. And he had good mentors, good role models, with Kempner and Pritikin and Burkitt. Okay, Michael Crichton now talks about history. If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. You are like a leaf that doesn't know it's part of a tree. Michael Crichton from Jurassic Park. And I think that's a great point, is that, people sort of say, studying the ancient Greeks and Romans is a waste of time. No, that is not true. Tons and tons of stuff relates back to the ancient Greeks in Athens and the ancient Roman Republic, which lasted 1,000 years. Well, it didn't. The Republic itself lasted 500 years, with the subsequent Roman Empire another 500 years. But Basically, modern history just repeats itself. The only difference is modern history has, technology added to it, but you could learn more from studying the ancient Greeks. If you study the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and the Bible in grade school and high school, you would come out of it knowing far more than students currently learn. I think about parallel references and metaphors from the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and the Renaissance phase all the time. Okay, I just listened to another lecture by Ayn Rand the other day, and it was so brilliant. And Ayn Rand said the three greatest times for art in all the history of the world have been the ancient Greeks, the Renaissance Italy, and the 1800s. Okay, that's what the three major, incredible advancements in the arts happened during those three times. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. And also that quote, if you don't know history, you don't know anything. You're like a leaf that doesn't know it's part of a tree. That's very much like Cicero's quote. He says, to not know what happened before you were born is to forever remain a child. And I would actually say, if you don't know history, you become a chump because you can't see the exploitation being carried out on you by the rulers who just do the same thing as the ancient ones did, but they used, modern technology to do it. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. The purpose of history is to explain the present, to say why the world around us is the way it is. History tells us what is important in our world and how it came to be. It tells us what is to be ignored or discarded. That is true power, profound power, the power to define a whole society. Michael Crichton. And of course, that quote just totally echoes of Orwell. Orwell basically said, whoever controls the past controls the present, okay? If you control what people know about history, you control what they know. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. All your life, people will try to take away your accomplishments from you. Don't you take them away from yourself. Yeah, that is totally true. Basically, if whoever's running the show in your local environment doesn't like you or doesn't like what you stand for or represent, they'll try to screw you over or belittle you. And so you have to learn to sort of maintain strong in your own mind and find a better environment for yourself. Okay, Michael Crichton continues. The only thing that matters is your experiences and your human relationships. The people that are part of your family and those people that care about you and who you care about. Okay, so that was from Conversations with Michael Crichton. I read a bunch of biographies, and he's a great American hero, this guy. I love Michael Crichton. So if you have a young person and they're looking for what they should read, it's good to read biographies. Read biographies about great people. You'll learn a lot. And Michael Crichton was a great man and a great genius. So anyways, that was it.